we are diving into this Max Blumenthal story here with Dave Smith. So Max Blumenthal just had an interview with Dave Smith, comedian Dave Smith, about these articles that he's been releasing. He also just dropped another article with an update of the Charlie Kirk situation about one of those donors in particular. But there's a couple of parts during this interview that I do want to highlight. First, we're going to get started with this whole idea of Zionism and what you are allowed to push back on and what you're not allowed to push back on. I always think it's really important here to try to like start with the why, like how did we get here? And I think that Max and Dave do that very well. So let's go ahead and get started with that. And then we'll get into some of these things that Max has discovered with his investigation.
It's going to take an enormous amount of force to create and maintain. And there's just no way you're going to do this without having a permanent state of war where the Arabs are your enemies indefinitely. And it's like, damn, if that wasn't pretty impressive to think of that in the aftermath of World War I. I mean, but I guess if you're over there, that was just the reality on the ground.
Yeah. And it was at a time of high colonialism around the world. So there were the great powers would have been supportive of this. They just wanted to be in control. And that's why the Zionist movement launched a terrorist campaign against the British Mandate authorities. But one of I think one of the other major intellectual forces who looms large in Israel today, who employed Netanyahu's father, Benjamin Milikowski, in New York, was Zev Jabotinsky, the father of revisionist Zionism. And if you read his seminal essay, The Iron Wall, which Israel's first prime minister, who was a labor Zionist, sort of more socialist-oriented Zionist, actually adopted, what Jabotinsky openly says in that essay is the native population has always resisted colonialism. Just look at what's happening in Africa. Look at the Native Americans. The Palestinian, he didn't call them Palestinians, but the Arabs will resist us as well. And the only way that we can build a Jewish state is with an iron wall of bullets and bayonets.
Everybody, that part right there is so incredibly important. So when you think about Israel's Iron Dome, that part is important. The reason why Israel has that Iron Dome, the reason why they have, of course, the Palestinian people in an open air prison, open air concentration camp, whatever you want, however you want to describe it. The reason why that Iron Dome is so important to them is because of what Max just said. They knew going into land that was not vacant, where there were people already living there, they knew that history had shown them that the indigenous people are going to rise up if you try to force them off the land. And rightfully so. They are going to fight back against you. That is why Israel is so invested in that Iron Dome. And this is why it is so important, especially if you are on the left. It is very important that you not fall for the okie dokes of these half-measured resolutions that are trying to get passed right now, even by some of the progressives, where they say we are pushing this measure to withhold weapons. It is very important that you actually look at those resolutions, because those resolutions only stop some of the weapons, and those resolutions never apply to the Iron Dome. And it's like we said before, it's like allowing a school shooter or a mass shooter to wear a bulletproof vest. So when these politicians tell you that they still support the Iron Dome, that is what they are supporting. So that part there is very important. We'll go on a little bit more here, and then I want to get to the Charlie Kirk part.
And so many Israeli leaders, Moshe Dayan, for example, in a famous speech at the Gaza border in 1953, said the same thing. Moshe Dayan said, we cannot plow a field or build a home without the steel helmet or the automatic cannon. So this is just a straightforward colonial mentality, and it's playing out at a time when of post-colonialism throughout the world, when post-colonial countries like China are rising to global superpower status. So Israel's completely anachronistic, and they're wondering why everyone is disgusted by what they're doing, Everyone hates them, and it's because they belong to another much worse era. And the only thing holding them up is Washington and its continuous supply, its air bridge of baby buster bombs.
Yeah.
So this is important for everybody to hear because, listen, when people say Israel has a right to defend itself, they are giving Israel a pass to continue to occupy and oppress the Palestinian people, and also to prevent the Palestinian people from fighting back. They're basically saying, go ahead, continue to take their homes and drag them off their land, and we'll continue to make sure that you can protect yourself. And I want you guys to think about this for a second. Put yourself in their situation. Let's go to the next part here. Put yourself in their situation. How would you feel if someone came to your house tomorrow, knocked on your door, and in Israel's case, a lot of times they don't even knocked on your door and said, hey, this is my house now. You have 5 minutes to grab what you need and get out of here, or we're going to bulldoze it anyway and build it the way we want. What would you do? Would you just say, okay, just go ahead and take it? Hell no. That's what the Palestinian people have been dealing with. Think about it that way. I want to get to this part of the interview as well here.
Been doing on it. Where are you right now? Like, what do you think the story is here? What do you think is important for people to understand about this?
Well, I'm working on a news story, and it's pretty much along the same lines as all the other stories I've been reporting, which is that, in the days and weeks before his death, Charlie Kirk was facing not just increasing Zionist pressure as the date approached of his first appearance on his campus-wide cross-country tour, but that actually he was bleeding Zionist donations. And I got the name of a major donor who apparently pulled out. I haven't dropped a piece yet, so I don't want to sell it out, but I just got him on the phone and he hung up on me when I asked him about it.
He didn't drop the piece at the time. I guess this interview was recorded, but I do have that piece now. We'll come right back to this. I do want to show you who that donor is. Let's go ahead and drop it like it's hot. So this is the new Gray Zone article here where it says top pro-Israel TPUSA donor terminated support for Kirk in days before his death. Ultra-Zionist billionaire Robert Shillman was one of Charlie Kirk's most committed donors. But as Kirk fell under attack for his increasingly critical Israel views during his final weeks, sources say Shillman ended funding for TPUSA. As his campus tour approached, Kirk was subjected to an almost daily lobbying campaign from Netanyahu's allies. So this is the dude that Max Blumenthal is talking about. Okay, so check out this new article. Eric, we can put the link to that article in the chat for everyone, and then we'll go back to this part right here.
So it seems like there's a there, and that they were pretty upset at Charlie Kirk because there's no space for allowing comic Dave Smith on stage for debate. There's no space for debate on this issue. It doesn't matter what the purpose of the debate is. There's no, it's like how they say there should be no daylight between the United States and Israel. Charlie Kirk was allowing daylight.
Right.
Everything I reported is backed up by public statements by Charlie Kirk and now by someone who had positioned himself as his personal Israeli handler. It's a guy named Rabbi Pesach Wolicki. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's from a group called Israel 365 Action, which is apparently funded by the Phallic family of Duty Free America, who sponsored the illegal settlement enterprise in the West Bank, real hardliners. He's also close to Regent University, which is funded by Pat Robertson. He's one of these rabbis that, like, his job is to groom Christians in the United States to support Israel and to support them as much as possible. I got some documents that his group had been sending to conservative influencers, offering them like free tours of Israel, biblical sites, going to Gaza, the Gaza border, etc. And he actually has given a series of interviews where he said that he was talking to Charlie Kirk almost every day leading up to his tour and giving him talking points, and that they were kind of having there was a running argument, and that Charlie Kirk, he said, was believing a lot of things he heard in the media, and that there were people close to him who were pushing him to be more anti-Israel, and that they spoke like almost like the day before his Utah Valley University fateful speech where he was horrifically killed.
So when people invest money in you, when you get donations from like these billionaires and some multimillionaires, etc., they want something in return. And oftentimes they are investing in you to play a role, to portray a role. Now, some of that you may believe in, or you may believe in all of it, and it works out great for you. But the problem comes when you start to doubt, when you start to question. These are some of the similar things too that happen to people that have been in some deep, like religious organizations where they've gotten in so deep and then they start to question. I think you guys have probably seen documentaries about this as well, like people that decide, I got questions and I want to discover things on my own, whether it's people that have left like the Amish community. I told you guys about my experience in the Pentecostal church as well, how they just wouldn't even talk to you anymore. If you left the church, you start asking like questions. Like I remember one of my friends that went to the Pentecostal church with me, she left before I did. And she was telling me about how she would run into former church members at the mall or at Walmart or whatever, and they would act like they didn't even know who she was. And so, listen, I believe that organizations can be good. I believe that groups can be good. But I also believe that when you get to a certain part where there's this restricted like group think, and you're not allowed to research, you're not allowed to think outside the box, that's when I think it is potentially harmful. And so Charlie Kirk, when they donated money to Turning Point USA, they were really asking him this is the role that you are going to participate in. And at that point in time, he may have felt that way. But as people get older, they grow, and sometimes they learn, and sometimes people may change their mind on certain things. Candace Owens was talking about this recently, that he was starting to go to mass. Catholicism is different than the Protestant religions. So now you're a problem for them. And that's how they see it. And I don't know how else to explain it to you guys, but the reality is when people invest money in you, they are asking you to do something for them. And the moment you start to, wiggle a little bit, then they have problem and they start like pulling back the money and all that type of stuff, right? Let's continue on.
There were also all these Zoom meetings leading up to Charlie Kirk's final days that I learned about, including with Joshua Hammer, this really charismatic figure that you debated. I don't know how you stood up to that. Just blizzard of facts. But he's one of Netanyahu's young voices in the media, a Newsweek editor. Sean McGuire, who's emerging as sort of like this junior Bill Ackman figure, who's a venture capitalist, very close to Elon, owns a house in Israel. He was on the Zoom call. He actually deleted a tweet where he mentioned the Zoom call, which is interesting. So Charlie Kirk was just under constant pressure. And just imagine having like this cabal of representing a sort of niche movement that is giving you enormous amounts of money and offering you more in order to say what they want, just constantly calling you. Rabbi Wolicki said they were planning to set up a WhatsApp group to feed Charlie talking points throughout his tour. And they said they were very worried because people were asking him about Gaza and the genocide, and they didn't want him to go off script. But
they did not want him to go off script. So you see, this is what I was saying. Some of the people out there, they are playing a role. And I know some people, sometimes you don't want to hear that, especially if it's somebody that you may have liked or whatever. But the reality is that is the case for some of them. Let's get to this part here as
all
well.
Over them. And I don't mean this, I'm not adding anything. I told you, I gave the audience the information I had, which is just that basically he told me, we don't actually disagree that much on this topic. But I could see, everyone could see in his public appearances, the struggle in this dynamic. And then it became this thing that like, it reinforced itself. So he would go, okay, well, I got to keep this together somehow. How maybe I moderate a debate on the subject. Then I can still present myself to my young activists as I'm the guy who's willing to have this debate.
Right.
But to the Zionist donors, that was way too far. And so now they're furious at him. And as you know well, Max, I'm sure you experienced this quite a bit in your career. I've experienced this quite a bit myself. There is some personality trait or characteristic to the ultra hardcore Zionists that for whatever reason, when you start drifting a little bit, they don't go, hey, I get your point and I see why you're asking these questions and this sure is a complicated issue. Let's come back here. When you start drifting this much, they go, you're Adolf Hitler.
Yep.
And you go, wait, what?
I'm telling you guys, and also talk to some of your friends, talk to some of your, anti-Zionist Jewish friends about this too. They may be able to tell you some stories, because some of mine like have told me some stories like as how they grew up, and I was like, what? I interviewed pro-Palestinian activists that were anti-Zionist Jewish, and there were some of them that said that their family members disowned them because they didn't support Zionism anymore. Like, I'm just sitting back and I'm like, this shit is wild. You know what I mean? Like, because to me, family is important. Family is family. You don't just disown family. So this stuff goes very deep, you guys. It goes deep into institutions. It goes deep into business. It goes deep into politics. It's all over the place.
Adolf Hitler? Like, no, I'm like just drifted. And then it just has this effect of pushing a lot of people further and further. It pushes some of them to say, you know what, I am Adolf Hitler, which I don't think is the best response. But it just, and you could see Charlie was dealing with that already. It's one of the things that really backs up your reporting, I think, that really, because Bill Ackman's coming out going, no, what are you talking about? Josh Hammer, all these guys. It was the friendliest of meetings.
Yeah, right.
It's like, okay, well, 48 hours later or something like that, he's on with Megyn Kelly. And like, it doesn't seem like that's the vibe that he's describing,
Yeah, you should, edit in that clip right now just to illustrate your point. I mean, he was complaining about stakeholders and donors giving him less space to criticize Israel than Israelis. And he seemed just visibly agonized. This is, what Charlie Kirk is dealing with is he's a Protestant coming from a very different cultural environment than a lot of the Jewish Likudniks he was dealing with. And what they deal with is like when they're kids, if they start to question Israel, they get smacked down so hard in their own families. I was lucky, like at least my nuclear family, they're not Zionists, and they understood why I was disgusted by the whole thing. So I never faced that. And there's just it's a different culture when you grow up in like this hermetically sealed communal Jewish world. There's no space on the Israel issue unless you're like ultra Orthodox and Satmar. And so they projected that onto Charlie Kirk. And he was, from what I heard from people who knew him, he was shocked by the way that they would speak to him, just by the rudeness of it. But that's the way they were spoken to about the issue. Yeah. And you go. And their entire identity focuses around this one pillar because, you're American, you're Jewish, it's a secular society, you're a minority, very easy to intermarry. But there's always this Israel, and that's something that you can just easily wave an Israeli flag and denounce the Palestinians, and you'll be recognized by your community as a good Jew. And if you give a lot of money, you can actually be considered a macher, like a big guy. So that's how they saw it, and I don't think Charlie Kirk fully understood that, so he was getting alienated by them.
Yeah, it's like he got in too deep, right? And sometimes it's like the people who, they join the mafia, but then they decide, hey, this is too much for me. I don't think I want to do all this. Okay. I mean, can't just leave the mafia. You know what I mean? So think about it in that sense. There's another part here where they do get into Tyler Robinson, I think, a little bit.
Then there is also another component, which is like there are some legitimate questions about the actual event, which are like I've had a few different things that have raised my eyebrows while reading it. So in terms of the actual assassination, I know you said in your article there's no evidence to suggest Israel is behind this. What are your thoughts on that? The people who are jumping on board with that conspiracy, and anything that is an oddity to you about the actual assassination?
Well, yeah, I've said that in multiple interviews too, that I don't have any evidence of an Israeli government or Israeli role in Charlie Kirk's killing. I stick to the facts. That's why I'm still here. The reason that this resonates, the idea that Israel played a role resonates, is Netanyahu himself and Israel in general maintain power through lying, manipulation, intimidation, and assassination, especially assassination. Yep. And Netanyahu rose to power after the killing of Yitzhak Rabin, his main political rival, and Leah Rabin, Rabin's wife, said Netanyahu incited his murder. Netanyahu marched in front of a mock coffin that said Rabin on it just days before the murder. And then Netanyahu's coalition partners, Ben Gvir, etc., they are like the spiritual heirs of Yigal Amir, who assassinated Rabin. So this is like Netanyahu's MO. He just tried to assassinate the entire negotiating team of Hamas inside a U.S. ally. And Israel has global assassination squads. But, what they would have done and what they were planning to do, and you could already see Laura Loomer rolling out the campaign, was to character assassinate Charlie Kirk if he continued to go off message. Yep. That's what they do. That's what they did to me. And, if I got like an op-ed in the New York Times, not that I would want to, they would try to destroy my reputation. That's what they're doing to Candace Owens. Like, I don't believe they're going to send a sniper to take out Candace Owens, but I hope she has good security because, they want to inspire some vigilante or something, but it's not like the Mossad's MO to go inside a U.S. ally and do this. At the same time, there's another reason why why people are spinning out their own theories.
Pause here for a second. What I appreciate about this conversation is that Max doesn't just like state all these claims, like, I know this, I know that, right? Like he says, like he has no proof that Israel was behind this in any way, shape, or form. He says from his experience, that's typically not the way that the Mossad would move, but he doesn't outright say, yes, I know for sure this, right? So why is that important when it comes to this case about what happened to Charlie Kirk? Because it talks about transparency. And part of the reason why people feel the way that they do and people have all these damn questions is because the FBI was not transparent. Kash Patel, I think, was just trying to catch someone as quickly as possible. The facts that they laid out and reported in the very beginning didn't make any damn sense. Some of the facts that they're saying now still don't make any damn sense. I'm sitting around and I'm looking at a crime scene and people are just moving things around a crime scene and they're not police. They're not investigators. I don't think you're supposed to touch those things because that's considered evidence. I mean, come on. You put the pieces together. The lack of transparency from the FBI is why people have started to draw the conclusions that they have drawn. And I think we cannot say that enough. If the FBI would have been more transparent about this process and what was really taking place, maybe not as many people would feel that way. But the stories don't add up. And I've covered it before on this show. Seeing this guy on the roof, Tyler Robinson, who they say is Tyler Robinson, with no gun, and a book bag, and people say he can disassemble. I'm like, okay, so he disassembled it, put it in the book bag, and also in that small book bag, he supposedly had 3 change of clothes, and then he assembled the rifle again and put it in the woods. He had time to do all this and change 3 times? It doesn't make any sense. So the transparency is very key. And Israel is known for not being transparent, and the FBI is not being transparent. All right, I think we have one more part here that I wanted to get to as well. I think this is when he talks about like moving forward.
A final point to you, and then I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to do your own research. Well, I would accept that Tyler Robinson could have done this alone, and that he could have been motivated by Charlie Kirk's anti-trans commentary, that this was some kind of trans shooting. Like there could have been a component of mental illness there as well. I can accept that. But Does that mean that Tyler Robinson is a leftist? If he was on some of these weird nihilistic Discord channels, which are themselves penetrated or at least surveilled by federal law enforcement, was he a leftist or was he a Democrat or a progressive? If they could show that he was at No Kings rallies holding up signs like calling Trump a pedophile or something, then I'd be like, all right, well, there it is. And like, the No Kings rallies went too far, run with it. But the narrative is already set. The narrative is and this is what the Trump administration has been trying to do all along, is keep the United States in a perpetual state of emergency in order to expand the power of the executive and the surveillance state and Palantir to surveil us, control us, and consolidate the power of his very narrow sectarian movement. And this is the perfect opportunity for them to do it. And we have to be very aware of what's going on and question not just the official story, but who Tyler Robinson really was. Because when Charlie Kirk was shot at Utah Valley University, he was being protested by a group of progressive students. One was holding up a sign that said Free Palestine. Another one had like a pro-LGBTQ sign. Another had a sign, maybe denouncing Charlie Kirk's comments on race or something. And they were interviewed by a pro-Trump videographer. I just watched this. I'll tweet the video out later. And he was challenging them. And they said, and they said that we don't hate anyone here. We still love them. We just disagree with them and think they're being misled. Then he starts challenging them on Palestine and Hamas. They condemned political violence immediately. They said, we just don't think like, we just are like, we want to debate this. That's really like the progressive left as I understand it. They're not really going to get on a roof with a sniper rifle and settle things that way. They're waiting for the next midterm election.
He's 100% right. Two things I want to add there. Yeah, progressives are more likely to fight back at the ballot box, right? Let's get the next progressive. Who are we going to, champion for right now? Like they're lining up to support Zoran Mandami, right? Like that's what progressives are more likely to do. And I think that this is why I said before, throwing around that word communism can be so dangerous because people don't even know the definition of communism, and just calling someone a communist who isn't even a socialist to begin with, that's how you get down that path. But the point is this: they want chaos. They want chaos. And you may wonder, why is that, Sabby? Why do they want chaos? There are people in the world who really do believe, wealthy people, poor working class people ain't thinking about this shit. There are elites, billionaires, wealthy people in the world who really do believe that the way that you are going to create order is by creating chaos. And they believe that from that chaos will naturally come order. And this is what I'm trying to tell everybody. That's why you guys look around the past couple of years, all these crazy things that are happening, it's chaotic. If you feel anxious, right? If you feel like you have a little bit of anxiety, if you feel on edge, sometimes like, I don't know what's going to happen. Look at it in all these different categories, whether it's foreign policy, whether it's economics, right? So different categories, social issues, it's chaos. That is what we are having right now. But there are people who believe that in order to get them all up under our thumb, right? In order to stop them from rebelling and get them all in line and have their surveillance and all these things, they believe that by creating chaos or having chaos, ultimately in the end of all of it, everybody will just be burned out. And from that, they will have order, and they will create that order by increasing surveillance, increasing the police state. Watch the movie Minority Report. That's a good example to point towards. This is what they believe, because the more chaos you have, the more reason they have to say, we're coming for your speech. We're coming for your freedoms. We're coming for this. You're going to have check-ins everywhere, and we're da-da-da-da. Like, people think that it's far-fetched, but I don't think that it is. And they know that chaos is coming, because the economy can show you that. I still don't think that the economy has gotten back to where it was before the '08 housing crisis. You know, if you disagree, that's fine. But from my experience, I don't think it ever improved back to where it was before then. I really don't. And what you have is like this, you have economic disparities, you have food disparities, you have genocide happening in the world, not just Gaza, but also the Congo, also Sudan. It's chaos. This part at the end here, where Max Blumenthal said that people are waking up.
It's a strategy of tension that is taking hold right now. And I think, we're in the double digits in this country of people who just are done with the duopoly, the corporate duopoly, and are willing to put aside the culture war to actually have real change and basically unite against the 0.1% and the war state. But we don't have a vehicle, and we're basically not allowed to run in either party. So we're just kind of out here in our podcast world.
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
Yeah, this is a really good. Watch the full interview. It's 1 hour and 15 minutes. Watch it, guys, because it is really good conversation. But I think that just kind of sums it up there, right? Like, I think more people are waking up and coming together and saying, listen, we don't want these wars. Or we don't want to be a part of a party that supports these wars. And it's not just younger people. I think more people are waking up to this. And so when it comes to turning the other cheek, when it comes to corruption, when it comes to the wars, when it comes to the police state, like all these things that just like really impact us, when it comes to the billionaires, when it comes to exploitation, I don't think we should be willing to turn the other cheek. And ultimately, we really need to be willing to not turn the other cheek when it involves someone in a position of power. When it involves power, we can't turn the other cheek. We really can't. And I think we've been doing that for too long. And I think that's how we kind of end up in these situations, to be honest with you. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.